So you've been a fan of my channel for a while now. You already know how big of a Saints Row fan I really am. And because there's going to be a brand new game coming out in a few months, I think it's about time to give you my rankings on the Saints Row franchise. Keep in mind, I'm only going to use the games that came out on console, so we're not going to use the Total Control game or any of the mobile games that dropped. With that out of the way, just like the boss would say,
it's our time now. Let's get this shit started.
So my number 5 pick is obvious. It's gonna be Saints Row Gat to Hell. So I'll be honest with you, I was very hyped when this got announced. We already reached a point in the franchise where it was gonna be very ridiculous, and the alien one already happened, so going to fight the devil wasn't really a big deal. But when I kept hearing more about the game, I was actually very mad. First of all, it was an expansion pack, which I was very disappointed. I thought it was going to be a full-on sequel or spin-off. Second of all, the whole game was going to be based on activities. And by all means, activities are fun. They're a big part of the Saints Row franchise. But having a whole entire game of it and barely having any missions was very concerning, and I was not happy with the idea. But at the end of the day, it did become a standalone expansion pack, so you can't get very mad at that, but it doesn't mean I have to enjoy it as much as others. This is the Saints Row game I play the least out of the entire franchise, so that tells you something. And the story was just whatever. You have to go to hell to save the boss from getting married to the devil daughter, and you get to play as Johnny and Kinzie. First of all, I don't know why they made Kinzie a main character in this story. It was very obvious, could have used anyone else, mostly Pierce or Shaundi, but whatever. It's done is done. But I gotta say that this was disappointing, even for an expansion pack, and it was more disappointing when this game became a stepping stone to a spiritual successor. My number 4 spot is gonna be Saints Row the Third. So Saints Row the Third is obviously the big shift from the original Saints Row franchise, and you could see a lot by tone, character, and everything in between. But my biggest problem with the entire game is that I did find the main story kind of bland. I did not enjoy the whole idea that they have one organization and they had 3 different gangs that was involved, and that was a linear story. Don't get me wrong, we did have options to choose from different missions from different characters, but it was kind of annoying that we didn't have the whole choose your own gang to defeat first type of situation. And you know, I don't want to repeat myself because a lot of the Saints Row community has already stated this before, and I've stated this in previous videos for many years now, but I'm going to quickly reference some of these. I was not a big fan of the idea of forcing you to play activities for main missions, because a lot of the activities they made us do were kind of bad. Like, I do not like Guardian Angel. I think it's one of the worst activities in the entire franchise, and I'm not a big fan of that. I wasn't a big fan of trafficking. I didn't like them in the previous game, but this time it was absolutely annoying because you had to do it twice in the main story. And a lot more, and especially the way they treated Johnny Gat in this game. Like, damn, you really killed him off just like that. So my number 3 spot is gonna be Saints Row 4. So yes, I know a lot of people are very shocked that I'll make this statement because most people will put Saints Row 4 at the bottom of the list. But personally for me, I find Saints Row 4 more entertaining than I did Saints Row the Third. Sure, it had a lot of problems, like don't get me started, from having the same boring city to removing cribs to having superpowers of all things, which is the most ridiculous thing you could do to a franchise. But I feel like there was more upgrades than they were downgrades, because personally for me, the story in Saints Row 4 was a lot more entertaining than the story that was in Saints Row the Third. Yeah, sure, fighting aliens is kind of ridiculous, and I hope this will never happen in the Saints Row franchise. But I feel like the characters were more fleshed out in this game. Like, sure, it's still the wacky adventure type game that we see, but all the characters and what they were going through that was introduced in Saints Row the Third, we kind of see expand upon in this game. Especially the whole scenario where Zinyak kidnaps each member of the Saints and you get to see what their nightmares are. Like, the boss's nightmare is a world without any chaos, well, Shaundi's nightmare is how they couldn't save Gat, and a lot more into that, which is very interesting. And it's kind of wild that they had that kind of concept in a more wacky shenanigans type of Saints Row game. But I'm still going to say that the game has a lot of flaws, and that's why it's in my number 3 spot. From still having the activities in the main story, by golly, at least they weren't boring as they were in Saints Row the Third, but that was still a big problem in the story that they should have not have brought back. giving the middle finger to every Saints Row fan when they saw the world explode, knowing that they had a cliffhanger story that they never brought up ever again until Gat of Hell, and even then it was still 100% unsatisfying. Seeing the past default players to also seeing previous Saints members dead or alive, or even previous gang member leaders, was very interesting. They didn't really utilize it that much, but it was still there. Plus they had side missions, which was really cool, that you didn't really have to do, because I mean obviously they're side missions, but they didn't feel worthless. But that's enough about this game. Let's go on to my number 2 spot. So my number 2 pick is going to be Saints Row 1. And yes, I know that's kind of a generic pick to say, because a lot of people have been saying that Saints Row 1 is their second favorite, just because, well, the game is realistic, so it's automatically better than 3 and 4. And sure, that is a fair factor, but I want to give you a more unique take, hopefully. So first of all, I gotta say the story is actually really good. Like every time I replay Saints Row 1, I get impressed about how the story is, because a lot of people just didn't really understand why this game was super impressive. Sure, most people thought of it as a GTA clone, but the story is absolutely amazing. It's crazy that a lot of people never got to play this game because they didn't really have an Xbox. So I feel bad that they kind of missed out on this game, because it's very well made. And I gotta make this kind of controversial opinion, but I think this game looks a lot better than Saints Row 2 graphically. My biggest problem with this game, and to be honest, I think it's the biggest problem in every Saints Row game, is the respect system. I hate the respect system in every Saints Row game, but I think Saints Row 1 had it the worst. Because yes, I understand Saints Row 3 and 4 had a respect system where you get to level up your character and become ultra powerful, but that one is more optional. Like sometimes I don't even bother using the upgrade system. I just do it maybe once or twice at best, but I don't use it. But in Saints Row 1 and 2, you have to gain respect to continue the main story. And I was never a fan of this idea, but the reason why I hated Saints Row 1 even more is because the activities in that game are a lot less entertaining than Saints Row 2. Don't get me wrong, they're still more entertaining than 3 and 4 by a long shot, just because those are outlandish and this one's more simple. But Saints Row 1's activities just weren't hitting the same. But enough negativity. I gotta say that the missions were absolutely incredible though, even though I kind of think the West Side Rollers mission were kind of weaker. But it doesn't really matter. Let's just all agree the Vice Kings had the best story in the game, and we just call it a day. But let's just go to my number 1 spot, my favorite game in the franchise. And this is so very generic, it's not even funny, but Saints Row 2 is my favorite Saints Row game of all time. I'm not even gonna kid around about this. Saints Row 2 is one of the rare examples where a gang simulator type game could have an excellent, well-written story. Don't get me wrong though, there were some games like GTA San Andreas and even later on like Sleeping Dogs, but I gotta say the storytelling was very interesting, because I like the whole idea of having a mostly dark type of character and story, but also having its entertaining values. I'm not claiming that it's unique, because I'm pretty sure other games have stuff like this, but it did have its own little charm, and I gotta say that it was done very well, from each gang being super unique in its own way. That I'm not claiming that the other games didn't have it, but I find the gangs in these games more interesting than the other ones. The Ronin, the Sons of Samin, the Brotherhood, and also technically having a 4th gang, which is basically Ultor. So it was unique, and I feel like the whole story was very balanced, and I don't believe that any Saints Row game will ever achieve this type of storytelling ever again, especially how unique the free roam is, that I could talk about for hours, but I don't want to be here that long. But you already know how I feel about this game. Maybe one day I'll do a retrospective of each game, but overall that is my ranking on the Saints Row games. Tell me in the comments down below, how do y'all feel about my list, and tell me y'all list. I would really like to know. So I hope you guys really enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. I'm out. Deuces.